and welcome to the second day of the INC Online Conference. To start today's session, we have Qcify. First, on behalf of the INC, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today and showing your support for our wonderful industry. I'd kindly like to remind everyone that this session will last 30 minutes. This session will consist of a short presentation from Qcify CEO, Raf Peeters. 5 years ago, Qcify started a journey to develop the first automated control system that would help food processors around the world organize their QC departments in a more objective, consistent, and agile way. Since then, the company has been further pushing the limits of 3D vision and artificial intelligence, while at the same time assuring that the returns on investment for their customers are on average 1 year. During this next seminar, Raf Peeters, founder and CEO of Qcify, will shed a light on how the company started, what the journey has been for the past 5 years, and what exciting and revolutionary technology they are about to introduce in the global food processing industry. And now I'd like to hand over the session to Raf. Thank you for joining us here today. We're delighted to have you.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, depending on where everybody is at. Thank you for the nice introduction. Also, thank you for the INC for organizing this online event. So today we're gonna speak a little bit about Qcify, where we came from, what we developed, and where everything is heading. So the presentation itself should be roughly about 20 minutes, and then afterwards we have time for Q&As. So feel free to post your questions in the Q&A box or raise your hand if you want to ask them directly. During the presentation, we'll go a little bit like via this timeline so that you guys have an idea of where we are at, how much longer you have to listen to me. It all started in 2015. And as any good company, we started off in a garage. I don't necessarily want to use this image to say that we're the same size as the other companies, but our mindset was kind of different, the same. And so what we wanted to do was start small, but try and make an impact on an industry, try and change the industry. So 5 years ago, we set out on a journey to bring more automation in the fields of food production, and we initially started off by focusing on quality control. So with the quality control, we saw a couple of issues. One is a lot of it was still done manually, and so when you speak or when a process is manual, you see or you know that it is very time consuming. It is sometimes inconsistent because you have a staff of people looking at product, and every person looks at it in a different way. And it's also expensive. We all know that labor costs year over year increase. And so we wanted to come up with a different system. So the system we wanted to develop had to be, of course, fully automated. It had to be more consistent. And we also wanted it to have a 3D vision aspects. Why 3D vision? Because ultimately a human, which currently does QC, we have our eyes, and the eyes basically work as a stereo system. It gives us 3D perception, and so that's why we wanted to focus on that 3D aspect as well. And also we wanted to have a reporting aspect to it, because very often you see that when it comes to data, in many cases, data is kind of a data avalanche. You have a lot of stuff, but what to do with it, how to interpret the data. And so we wanted to have a fast and accurate way of reporting. Everything had to be digital, of course. It had to be objective. And then also all the reports, all the data, we did not want a human to have to like kind of generate it. It all had to happen automatically. So after roughly about a year and a half of development, we then introduced the first quality inspection system during the Almond conference in Sacramento. And for most companies, the easiest way to start using the technology was by placing it in their QC labs. The staff of food processing companies was already used to going out in the plant, taking a sample here and there in the line, taking it back to the lab and analyzing it there. So the easiest way to introduce the system was by placing it in the lab, where a human could still go out and collect a sample, start the sample on the machine, then go and collect the next sample while the machine was sampling. So that's how we initially started with the system. But then down the road, of course, we had more and more people asking us, like, but isn't there a way to kind of auto sample or to continuously sample along the processing lines? And so that's when we saw some of the systems moved right next to the line, and in combination with like an auto sampler and a scale, the system would then basically a sample would be delivered to the system, it would be analyzed, and then the product would slide back into the line. Nobody had to touch the product. And so from an automation point of view, that definitely helped. And so over time, we developed different technologies that we added on to our system. So where we started off with conventional vision algorithms, we said, like, this is all good and well to get started, but ultimately we do want to go in the direction of artificial intelligence and deep learning. To give you a little bit of an idea, we had a couple of engineers developing or writing the software code for roughly about 2 years. But at the same time, we also had a couple of people developing like the framework for the artificial intelligence training cycles. And so literally in less than 3 weeks, that deep learning algorithm outperformed what our engineers combined did over a time span of 2 years. And so for us, that was clear, like, okay, this is definitely the direction we want to go. And by implementing the deep learning and artificial intelligence, it allowed us to create some kind of a network effect. And what is that network effect? Is like what you see very often in the industry with optical systems is you install a system here or there, and let's say a customer has 8 sorters, and they buy the 9th sorter. Again, you have an engineer that comes by, has to calibrate the machine, do the basic programming, whereas that machine should be already pre-configured based on what all the other machines already did. And that is the network effect that we can create with the Qcify technology. It's like with every new system that we install somewhere around the globe, all the others benefit from it, because that new system pushes data back on user behavior, on products that run through the machine. And let's say a system in Australia sees a certain type of defect, which we've never seen here in California. By having all the systems push data back, we can improve that general algorithm. And so the machines in California already know that that certain defect in Australia, if it one day shows up here in California, we know how to classify it. So that has allowed us to really build out a network. This past year, we celebrated our 5th anniversary. Well, this past year, actually, this year, 2020. And so we also installed our 100th machine this year. So we have focused on working together with the industry, with processors, but also with ERP providers. Why? Because the last thing you want is having an automated process, a machine that analyzes something, and then having to manually enter or transfer the data from that machine. So we have integrated with these ERP providers, and the minute the sample is analyzed on the Qcify, your data will be in your main ERP system. So we started off on the automated quality control, but then of course, once you launch a system, then questions will start about what's next and what's coming. And I think if I would have asked you end of 2019, like what are your main issues in the line, I think everybody would probably say, yes, my labor is getting more and more expensive, and it is very time consuming to collect the data. Fast forward half a year, now there is a whole different aspect, what's happening in food processing plants across the globe. And that has something to do with a little virus that showed up, being COVID. The big issue is not necessarily that it is affecting the food production itself, but it is affecting the staff of food processing facilities. And especially as a company, as a food processor, you try to implement rules, you try to make sure that your people are safe, but at the same time, you also want to make sure that your production continues in a fairly normal way. And so that threw a whole different curveball at the industry. And I think, to be honest, automation projects that were already on the planning or the schedule in the next 5 or 10 years, all of a sudden people realize like, hey, we have to automate way more. And so that's when Qcify was born. Qcify is an inline monitoring system, because that was the feedback we got from customers, was like, okay, it's all good and well, and I analyze my 500 gram sample or 1,000 gram samples for quality control purposes, but is there a way that I can capture more data of what's happening in my line, and basically with a purpose to do a line optimization or line automation. So people wanted to get away from manual quality checks and humans running around the plant to just collect data, just to try and understand what's happening in different areas in the line. So the Qcify system is basically a system that can go over an existing line. And why did we develop it that way is because a lot of companies already have infrastructure, and the last thing you want to do is like rip out part of your line, rebuild it. It just adds to the cost of the technology that you try to implement. So with the Qcify system, we want to have an optimized line control and basically a 24/7 view of what's happening in your processing line. Again, also on the Qcify system, we use our AI and deep learning algorithms. Why? Because we strongly believe that every single object that goes through your line can only have one label, or it can only be one category. And with various optical systems, what you see is like there is a whole set of thresholds. And one threshold can pick up 3 or 4 different categories, or one defect, let's say a dark rock, might be picked up with a threshold for foreign material. It might be picked up with a threshold for off-color or dark-colored objects. But if you want to do quality control, if you really want to understand what's happening in your line, it cannot be 2 categories, an object. It has to be either foreign, or it's a dark object, or a dark almond, or dark walnut, or whatever the product may be. And so that's why we keep focusing heavily on that artificial intelligence and deep learning approach. So our ultimate goal is that we help our customers transform their process and basically provide consistent quality and also, if needed, the highest quality available in the industry. So mid of this year, we showed the Qcify technology to our existing customers. Roughly about 80 to 90% of the customers, they all had the same questions. It's like, well, it's good looking at, let's say, a final hand sort room, that I put those boxes. I know how many pieces of shell I have in my walnuts, or I know how many pieces of hull I have in my almonds. But if you see a piece of foreign, for example, whether it's hull or shell or real foreign like rocks or plastic. Why not pick it up? And so really about 80 to 90% of the people that we showed the technology, that was their first comment. So that's when we started to work on a pick-out system that could be adapted or that could be added on to our sensor box. And that's when the AI sorter was born. It's basically, the goal is that whenever we see let's say a piece of foreign or real insect damage, that we can pick it out as well. And ultimately, again, it's what we try to do is automate to make sure that we do not continuously have to rely on people in order to keep the lines going and to keep it a good quality. The pickout system easily integrates with the Qcify sensor box. So as a customer, you can say, well, I'm going to put my box first so that I have an idea of what's happening. And then at some point, I maybe want to pick out the defects. So then they could add it on. You could add it on. It uses compressed air. So most of you would probably think yeah, but if you want to pick out something from a conveyor belt, you would need one of those robotic arms, or you would need a vacuum system. And we both know that, or we know that both have their issues. But robotic arms, yes, they have become better, but it's moving parts. And moving parts, we all know, I think many of you have experienced enough, moving parts will break down at some point. And so they also require some higher maintenance. And then the vacuum system, well, most processing facilities do not have vacuum systems. And it is an expensive thing to do, create enough vacuum to pick up defects. So we use compressed air. Our system is a patented system, both the sensor box and also the pickout system. So there's no need for those expensive vacuum systems. Everybody has compressed air, so you just run compressed air to the system, and that's it. So ultimately, what we want to do is be more consistent, provide the tools to be more consistent, that every processing plant can run 24/7 without having to heavily rely on people. It's the big issue at the moment is too many people do not know what's happening in their lines. And so then we have a human go and look at a line and say, okay, I see this pass by, let's go more or less aggressive on this machine or that machine. But ultimately, a lot of that is emotion. A lot of that is human interpretation of. And so Qcify wants to be that partner where we collect data in various positions in the line that allows you to really optimize your line. As was said in the introduction in the beginning, we also try to keep your return of investment in mind. And so typically we want to try and develop technology and systems where you have a return in roughly about a year. And then, as I said before, the machine is fully patented. But what we did see also is it's good to help customers automate their processing lines. But if you're in the business of automation and quality control, we do not want to do that on a customer side, but then as an organization, not focus on that. And so with more systems going in, we really wanted to do something on the customer support side. And so we developed a Qcentral system. Basically with that system, we want to move what your typical, call it reactive customer support in the industry is, and move to a proactive customer success. What does that mean? It's every system has data, collects data. And so the better we know what's happening with every system, the better we can anticipate. And our ultimate goal is we want to know and fix the issues before you even realize, or before your operators even realize that they happened. So Qcentral basically monitors our systems 24/7. We know, for example, how many times somebody hit an emergency exit, what the temperature is, how many samples they ran, if a sample was run correctly. And so QCentral really helps to also automate ourselves. And because the last thing you want to do is have people drive around just to arrive somewhere and flip a switch. So we could only develop all that technology with a great team. And we, like I said, we didn't only want to automate our customers' plants, we also want to automate ourselves. And so continuously we monitor what we do, how can we adjust course slightly, because ultimately the better version of ourselves we can be, the better solutions we can come up with for our customers. Then over the years, you might have seen us in a couple of magazines or on TV last year and this year. We did win the INC award. So it has been good so far, but then the question is what comes next? So we will be hitting the road in California with a mobile roadshow. Basically, it's a self-contained mobile demo center. And that way we can show the technology to our customers here in California. That will start happening in Q1 of 21. So only have to wait a few more months. And we will have both our QC machine and then also the Qcify system, sensor and sorter in the mobile demo center. So I would say if there's any questions, yeah, definitely ask them. One thing, if we cannot cover your questions during the Q&A now, then reach out to us. We have a virtual booth, so we will be there to answer your questions. We can set up a video call if you want as a follow-up, if you want to dive deeper into personalized questions. So yeah, let's look at some of the questions. So I see one question that came in through the Q&A section is if we have any luck in advancing the technology in the walnuts. Timing-wise, that's a very good question. So we did indeed start running tests on the Qcify system on walnuts. Basically inline inspecting the product and with an aim to try and pick up if there's any shell pieces remaining, because that's one of the questions we got from the walnut sector. So we're doing some first tests, and we will be sharing that info shortly. So keep an eye on your mailbox in the upcoming days and weeks. So on the walnuts, yes, we do want to control the product or inspect the product, see if there's any shells remaining, but also down the road we want to do an automatic classification of what's the cover grades and other defects as well. So I see that was a question that came in. There's also a poll. I'll launch the poll. So if you feel in a mood to answer some questions via polling, you can do that in that section as well. Let me see if there's any other questions. So yeah, then another question was kind of along the same lines, does it only work on almonds? So no, our quality control system, we do have installations on almonds and pistachios. We're currently also further developing the system for hazelnuts. And then, yeah, as I already mentioned, we started first testing on walnuts. Pecans will also be next. So there's a couple of customers that had some questions about pecans, so that's coming up next as well. And then another question was, what is the maximum sample amount? So on our Qcify, the quality inspection system, typically customers run roughly about 500 gram samples. We have a few customers that run 1,000 or 2,000 gram samples. So that's kind of the range. So the quality inspection system is really for like a smaller sample, but high resolution. That system has a 30 micron resolution, so we can really see a very small defects. Then for the inline system, at the moment we inspect an area that's roughly about 1.5 feet. That's let's say about 45 centimeters wide, and so with that system, we at the moment roughly inspect about 1,500 pounds an hour, 1,500 to 2,000 pounds an hour max. So yeah, the two systems have different purposes. You can do like smaller, high resolution quality control inspection, or then more like inline inspection. That's of course bigger volume, maybe a little bit less resolution, but it really depends on what you want to use the data for. Let me see if there's any other question that came up. No, I think that's those are the questions so far that I have. So unless there's other questions, I would say yeah. Feel free to stop by at our virtual booth. Our team will be there, so we can ask questions. Oh, there's one question that just came in. If the system can do a microbiological analysis. At the moment, not yet. So we're really focusing initially on the visual inspection, because that can really help automate and move from a human data approach to an automated data approach. We are though continuously looking like, are there sensors that we can add on to the system? So the answer is at the moment no, but it might be coming down the road, yes.
Perfect. Well, Raf, I want to jump in here. That about wraps up for our 30 minutes. Again, I want to say thank you to Raf for hosting this session. I'd like to remind the participants that you can reach out for further information through the INC online conference networking area, or you can visit Qcify's virtual booth to have any other questions answered or set up a phone call with them as you would like. So once again, thank you to all the participants for joining us here today, and we hope to have you in further sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.